Well, hello and welcome to the Mix 6 podcast as part of the Mix, the UK's leading digital support service for young people. From content to counselling to community to crisis support, whatever it is you're going through, just hop on over to themix.org.uk to find out all about us and see how we can help. In this episode for Youth Employment Week 2025, we are talking all about apprenticeships, and we are in the good and capable hands of apprentices or ex-apprentices from Swift ChildCare. Swift focus on practical skills, SEND awareness and early years legislation for both learners and employers, focusing not entirely, but primarily on young people. And we're joined today by young people who have built a fulfilling career from Swift.
Hi, I'm Phoebe. I completed my level 2 and I now work for Swift.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I completed my level 3 with Swift and now I'm moving on to more of a leadership role within my setting.
It's that age-old question for young people when they've finished school or coming towards the end of the school, like, what do I do now? What path do I take? There might be pressure coming from parents about going into university, or just general pressure like, come on, you need to come up with an answer. And I feel that apprenticeships are always an option, but not maybe the first option. So it's really good to talk about this today. I'm going to take it all the way back to our very first question, and that is, what inspired you to choose an apprenticeship? We'll start with you, Phoebe. What inspired you?
So I was never the type of learner to enjoy sitting in a classroom. I felt like everything was going in one ear, coming out the other ear. I didn't learn well from looking at a board and writing from a textbook. I was really inspired by the hands-on environment of an apprenticeship, and I like the idea of being paid to learn about something I was really passionate about.
Charlotte, how about you?
It was a bit harder for me just because I was sort of pushed into the direction of having to go to sixth form and then having to go to uni, and it was a lot. But it was definitely, I think, my friends that inspired me into an apprenticeship because they knew more about it because they had siblings that had gone into apprenticeships. So yeah, and then when I found out, like, you get to earn money while you learn about things that are really important, it was like, yeah, okay, that's what I need to do, sort of thing.
It's really interesting to hear how you went through the university routes and then discovered for yourself, oh, actually, no, that's maybe not what I want to pursue. Seems like it's been like a long but worthwhile journey for you.
Definitely. Because I think schools, especially at least my high school, was trying to push everyone to get to uni, whether they get I don't know if they get something out of it themselves, like extra money in the budget, but they wanted everyone to go to uni. And I was sort of just sitting there and like Phoebe, I was just not the one that can learn in that environment. So it was quite stressful.
I did do sixth form for a year and I was like, this just isn't for me. Everything was going in one ear. I mean, I couldn't sit in the classroom for an hour, like I wasn't learning properly. So I definitely think the hands-on environment was something that grabbed my attention about apprenticeships.
Yeah.
And that's such a valid point, because I feel like we're all different learners. We learn in different ways, and I found it quite excruciating personally, just sitting down in lectures the whole time, just writing notes, writing essays, dissertations. It isn't for everybody, and it shouldn't be assumed that that is the one and only way. It sounds very cheesy, but it's not about the goal, or the destination. It's about the journey, and it's how you get there, and you've got to get a lot of satisfaction from that as well. Yeah. Moving into our next question, a lot of people are curious, a lot of young people are curious about what a typical day in an apprenticeship looks like.
Yeah, so when I was doing my apprenticeship, it was kind of, I had to learn how to balance my study with working in the setting. So I'd usually, I'd work with the children up until maybe lunchtime, and then I'd take a break and I'd do some study, and then I'd go back to working with the kids. So I made sure I was definitely balancing it. So I had time to do both at the same time.
Yeah, for me, my manager sort of blocked out sessions. So I was mostly with the children, and then I might get an afternoon once a week where I would do all of that like theory-based work and any like things like that I needed to learn.
Did you find the actual studying part of it easier to manage, knowing that you were using those, whatever you were learning, you were using that in practice on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, it's definitely easier to link it. So when you learn about like safeguarding, or when you learn about health and safety and like learning about risks, or even like theories of play, you can link it because that's what you see every day. That's like those are your children. You know, you learn them, and you're able to learn all of the things, like all of the theory-based stuff, because of that.
I wanted to ask what skills you've gained that you perhaps didn't expect to learn. So maybe like more personal skills.
Yeah, so before I started my apprenticeship, I felt like I really struggled with my communication. I hated meeting new people. I'd always avoid going to social gatherings because I was like, I just don't want to speak to new people. But since working in a nursery and working as an apprenticeship, I think my confidence has really grown massively. I love speaking to people. I was being dragged away from the door in the nursery because I was stood speaking to parents for like half an hour. But yeah, I definitely think my communication has grown like massively since starting my apprenticeship with Swift.
I mean, the proof is that you're on a podcast right now having a chat. So
Yeah, I wouldn't have done this a couple of years ago.
Yeah, nice. Charlotte.
It's sort of all the little things. Like I find that my time management is a lot better. Even when I'm just out and about, just like I sort of look around and I see, oh well, that's a risk. Like there shouldn't be children there. That's a risk. And it's sort of like, it's one of those annoying things that's always in your head because it always has to be in your head, like at work. So yeah, or even just like recognizing if a child is tired, like around me. It's not my child. I don't work with that child. It's just a child like that next to me in the restaurant, and I know, oh yeah, they're tired. That's why they're crying.
So you built instincts into you. You just know. Yeah. We talked about skills, and we've talked about how you benefited as a person and as a professional. Wanted to move into our next question when we hone in on potential challenges that you've experienced. And if any, what challenges have you experienced throughout doing an apprenticeship?
I think I struggled to balance my study with my social life. So I was sometimes leaving my work till last minute, and I was like, oh, maybe I should sit down and start doing my work. That was probably the biggest challenge that I faced. And then when I first started, I struggled asking questions. I feel like I wasn't really learning much because I didn't want to ask questions. I was a little bit embarrassed because I was the only apprentice in my setting at the time. But once I overcome that, I feel like I probably annoyed them with the amount of questions I was asking.
I think for me, I was quite self-conscious. Like, it's your first day, it's your first week. You don't know the children, you don't know what you're meant to be doing. And like, of course, you've got to ask those questions. But for me, I always felt like I was maybe upsetting them because they'd been there for 4, 5, 6 years, and it's my first week. And I wanted to like do everything right, but I hadn't learned how to do it. So it was, yeah, I think it was more just anxiety for me, like wanting to make sure everything was like everything I was doing was correct, but not having the confidence to ask.
Yeah. You're a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how is that anxiety now, Charlotte? Is it easier to manage?
It's a lot easier to manage because when it comes to like routine or my children or their needs, I'm very on top of it all. I sort of remember. So it's a lot easier to manage. But it's always there. It's always there. It's just now that I know what I'm doing, I can say, actually, no, I'm okay now.
So it's there, but you're in control.
Yeah.
And you're aware. Yeah. And going back to what you talked about, Phoebe, the balance between socialising and studying and being an apprentice. Obviously, it's a very different route to people who go the perhaps normal university route. And potentially a lot of people see that divide when they finish school, they finish college, and your friends go down to university and you're doing an apprenticeship. How did you deal with that? If that happened to you, how did you deal with that change?
Yeah. All of my friends did go to uni, so I think that's kind of what set me back with my learning, because I was constantly like driving to go and see them and asking them to come out. So that's where I kind of struggled to balance my study and my social life. But yeah, because obviously they all went together, and then I was kind of left back at home doing my apprenticeship. But after they'd been there for about a year, I'd balanced it. I'd go see them when I had free time. But yeah, I managed to balance it now. I got all my work done, thankfully.
Yeah, nice. We want to talk about myths and misconceptions, perhaps around apprenticeships. Are there any misconceptions that you can just open up and unfold for people?
One I always heard was that apprentices are sort of useless. Like they'd get us to do, like the qualified staff would get us to do the nappies and the cleaning, but they wouldn't let us do activities with the children and actually plan like our activities and just day-to-day sort of things. It's quite hard trying to sort of tell the staff around you, like, no, I know what I'm doing. I've learned all of this stuff, like, let me help. So that was one of them, yeah.
Big misconception that I've heard is that apprenticeships are only for young people, when actually, after I'd been at my setting for a year, we had an apprentice come who was 30 years old. She had kids, she'd lived some of her life. So that definitely shows that misconception definitely isn't true. And then another misconception I hear all the time is that apprenticeships are for people who may not have done as good in school. But actually, we have apprentices that have gone through A-levels, got A stars, and they were going to go to uni, but they just thought that an apprenticeship was better for them.
That's really interesting, yeah, because a lot of people do have the tendency to compare. Oh, if I go to university, therefore I'm better, and more intelligent. But that's really not the case at all, is it, Phoebe?
No, we have so many apprentices, that have done their A-levels, and uni's just not for them. Like I said, I wasn't the type of learner that wanted to sit and, listen to a teacher talk for an hour. That just wasn't for me. So maybe that was the same for them.
Moving into our last question, this was suggested by young people who we support, and it is such a fantastic question. And it is simply, what advice would you give to somebody considering an apprenticeship?
I think I've talked about it quite a few times, but making sure to balance your study and your social life from the very beginning. So I left it like halfway through my apprenticeship and had to catch up on so much work. So I think that's probably the biggest piece of advice that I'd give to people thinking about starting apprenticeships. And then probably don't be afraid to ask questions, because that's another thing I struggled with. And I learned so much more when I learned to start asking questions. I was constantly asking questions, and I was getting on people's nerves. Like every 2 minutes, I was like, how do I do this? How do I do that? But it definitely helped me to broaden my knowledge.
I'd say just try. Like, it will be hard, and it will sometimes be scary and just riddled with anxiety and stress and just horrible, but just try, because you can only benefit from it. You will only get better.
Another great answer. Thank you so much, Charlotte. If you were to summarise this whole chat into one sentence, one golden piece of advice for young people who are listening right now, what would it be?
Just do it. Don't hesitate to do it. Just do it. I think I hesitated a lot. I had a massive gap in my learning where I literally did nothing. I was sat in my house learning nothing. So I think definitely just do it.
It's okay to not do what everyone else is doing.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for today. If you're listening right now and you want to find out a bit more about Swift, then just Google Swift ChildCare. Am I right in thinking that they're not just in the Midlands, they're based everywhere?
So we have Liverpool, London, Manchester, everywhere around the East Midlands. There's loads of places. I probably can't think of them all off the top of my head, but yeah.
And if you wanted to find out more about the world of work and apprenticeships, then head on over to themix.org.uk, where we have hundreds of articles and resources around those topics. Thank you for listening. Take care, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.